All right, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into a framework that is seriously shaking things up for PHP and Laravel developers. We're talking about Laravel Livewire. So, if you've ever built a modern web app, this is probably going to sound really familiar. You've got your rock-solid backend, but then to make the front end feel slick and interactive, you have to bring in a whole separate, heavy JavaScript framework like Vue or React. But what if you didn't have to? What if you could just skip that entire layer of complexity and build those amazing dynamic interfaces using the language you already know inside and out, PHP? To really get why Livewire is such a big deal, we first have to talk about the problem it was built to solve. And honestly, it's the sheer complexity that's crept into building modern user interfaces. And wow, this slide lays it out perfectly, right? On the left, you've got the traditional stack. You have your PHP backend, then you have to build an API layer, then you have a totally separate JavaScript application on the front end that has its own state management. I mean, it's powerful for sure, but that is a lot of moving parts. But then you look over at the right, the Livewire way. It's just cleaner. Laravel and Livewire act as one cohesive unit, and that whole middle layer, it just handles it for you. It's a massive simplification of the whole architecture. And that simplification, well, that brings us right to the hero of our story today. Let's get into what Laravel Livewire is all about and why so many people are calling it such an elegant solution. So, what is it exactly? Well, at its core, Livewire is a full-stack framework that sits right on top of Laravel. And here's the magic trick. It lets you build those reactive, modern, dynamic interfaces we all want, but you do it by writing simple PHP classes and using the Blade templating you already know. No need to become a JavaScript wizard overnight. So, why would you go this route? Well, the benefits are incredibly practical. First off, and this is huge, it's a massive boost to your productivity. You're not constantly switching hats between PHP and JavaScript. This makes your whole architecture simpler and makes building common features, especially things like CRUD forms, just incredibly fast. And the best part? You still get those snappy, real-time UI updates because Livewire is handling all that complex JavaScript for you behind the scenes. Okay, I know what you're thinking. This sounds a little too good to be true, right? So how does it actually work? Let's pull back the curtain and see what's going on behind the wire. This right here is the best way to think about it. Imagine there's this invisible magic wire that connects your user's browser directly to your Laravel application. Livewire basically is that wire. It manages all the complicated back and forth communication, all the AJAX calls and responses to make the whole thing feel instant and seamless. Let's break that magic down into 4 really simple steps. First, the user does something. They click a button, they type into a search box. Second, Livewire instantly zips an AJAX request back to your server with the updated info. Third, your PHP component on the server gets that data, does its logic, and re-renders its little piece of the view. And fourth, this is the really clever part, Livewire gets that new HTML and intelligently patches the page, only updating the exact bits that actually changed. It's incredibly efficient. Okay, so theory is great and all, but nothing beats seeing it in action, right? So let's walk through a super simple, practical example to see just how easy it is to get your first Livewire component off the ground. We're going to build the classic hello world of reactive UI. A simple counter. A plus button, a minus button, and a number. It's the perfect example because it shows you all the core moving parts of Livewire in the simplest way possible without any extra noise. So every single Livewire component really has 2 halves that make a whole. First, you've got the PHP class. You can think of this as the brain. It holds all the data, like our current count, and the logic, the methods that can change that data. Then you have the Blade view. This is the face. It's the HTML that displays the data, and it uses special little tags like wire click to connect user actions directly to those methods in your PHP class. It's a really clean and simple connection. And get this, creating both of these files, already linked up and ready to go, it is ridiculously easy. You just run one single command in your terminal, PHP artisan make class Livewire counter. That's it. Laravel generates both the class and the view file for you. It's just done. And you know what? Getting Livewire set up in a Laravel project you already have is just as easy. It's literally a 2-step process. First, you pull it in with Composer, which you're already used to. Second, you just drop 2 little helpers, @Livewire styles and @Livewire scripts, into your main layout file. That tells Livewire where to put its stuff, and you are officially good to go. Okay, so we've seen the what's and the how. But let's take a step back for a second and talk about the why. Why does this all matter? What's the big picture here? And this right here is the key takeaway. Livewire basically bridges this huge gap in web development. It gives you all the power of a modern reactive front end that users expect, but it lets you build it with the simplicity and comfort of the back-end language you already know and love. Now look, is it the silver bullet for every single project out there? Maybe not. If you're building a hyper-complex in-browser video editor, a dedicated JS framework might still be the way to go. But for the vast majority of web apps out there, this means you don't have to be a JavaScript master to build a truly modern application. And the ultimate payoff for you, the developer? It lets you put 100% of your brain power where it really matters, building awesome features for your users. You spend way less time wrestling with JavaScript build tools and API contracts, and more time actually shipping code that provides real value. And all of this brings us to one final big question. By empowering backend developers and radically simplifying the stack, is Livewire showing us a glimpse of the future for full-stack development, at least in the Laravel world? It's a pretty compelling thought. That's all for this explainer. See you next time.